Alright guys, welcome back. It's been a while since I recorded my last video. In today's video, we're going to look at taking user input. Alright, so in HTML, we use what we call the form element. Alright, so we're going to write form here and we press enter, and as you guys can see, I have a form element over here. And so we have this action attribute. For now, I want you guys to ignore this action attribute. We shall talk about it later on in our upcoming lessons. Alright, so inside this form element acts as a container of other elements that we're going to place inside or nest inside this particular element. All right, so what are these elements? We can talk about what we call the input element. All right, so I'm going to write over here, and if I press enter, as you guys can see, I have an input of type text. All right, so this would help me to collect textual data from the user. All right, so if I'm to save this, and obviously I want to run this in my browser, so the way we do it in Visual Studio Code, we right click inside the document and then you go down here to open with Live Server. This will take you to the web page. All right, so up here we have our input up here. This is the input that we created just now over here. If you're not sure, obviously you can inspect your elements. You can right click here and go down and check inspect. All right, so if I'm to inspect, if I can hover over, you guys can see this is the input that I just placed inside this form element. The form is invisible, all right, so you cannot see, but it's there. It's a container that we have. All right, so having done this, if you were to visit a page and then you see an input like this, you would know what to enter in this particular input. And so we need to prompt the user. We need to tell them what to enter in that particular input element. And so we use what we call the label element. Okay, this is another element that you can find inside a form element, right? So for now, I want you to ignore the for attribute, right? So we can say enter your name for now. All right, so if I save this, and obviously if I go back to that particular web page and check out, you can see the text is now appended in front of this particular input. All right, so now they know they have to enter their name. All right, and so I want to talk about these two elements. Currently, these two are not connected in any way, right? What do I mean by they are not connected in any way? If I click on this text, it's not going to focus this particular input. So each time I want to focus on this particular element, I have to click inside it. But sometimes, especially if you're using a mobile phone, you might not be able to click inside this particular element. You might be able to click on the text so that you can, focus on this particular element. So how do I go about that? We have to link these two together. So how do I link these two together? That's where the for attribute comes into play. However, I have to give this an identity. All right, I have to first give my input element an identity. So in HTML, if you want to give an identity to an element, you use what we call an ID attribute, just like your ID. Right, it identifies you. Specifically you as an individual. No two individuals have got similar IDs. So that's how IDs work in HTML. And so for now, let's say I want to give it an ID of name. You can name it whatever you want. This is the ID. And so for me to connect these two, I will say now this label is for this particular element, but we can use its ID to identify it. So we're going to say it's for the name, as you guys can see. All right, so if I am to go back now, let me first save this, Control S. Did I save this? Control S, obviously. And then if I go back, and now we can test what's going on with my web page. Okay, so now if I want to focus on this, I can click on this text. As you guys can see, it's now focusing. If I click on this, it's focusing, or I can focus by clicking inside. But these two are linked together, so it's more like they're one thing. And so I can click on here and then start entering my information. All right, so these are some of the elements. I'm not exhausting everything, but the next thing I want to talk about in today's lesson is the type attribute. Obviously, you guys can see we have type text, which means we have some other types. And so I want to talk about a few types that we have, of input elements. And so I'm going to say input and then password. We have input password. Okay, so I'm going to do away with the name for now, and I'll leave that ID and I'll say the ID is pass. And obviously we need to label this, right? The label is going to come right before the element, the input element. And so I'm going to say label over here, and I want to say this is for pass. The for value has to be similar to the ID, to the value of the ID. And so I'm going to say enter your password. Enter your password up here. All right, so what's the difference between these two, the input type text and the input type password? All right, so let me try and save this and then go back to the browser, and I want you guys to notice this. Right now I have two, obviously I have two input, elements, this one and this one. We know this is the text input, and then this is the password input. And so if I enter my name here, Sadson, and then I move on to enter my password, I want you guys to notice. So let me try, and now you guys can see the text has been hidden, right? I get these small circles, small black circles. And so this is how the password input behaves. It hides, the password from somebody who might try to peep into my password and steal my password. And so it's going to hide that. And so that's how we use this one. We have a number of these, input types. We have the text, we have the password, we have the number, we have the email, and blah, blah, blah. And so you have to use the right one when you are creating your forms. One more thing before I leave, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. I want to thank you again for your time. See you in our next video. For now, I'm out. Bye-bye.